Hi everyone, my name is Mikaela. I use she, her pronouns and I work for the Pikes Peak Library District. Today I am going to show you all how to draw Aang from Avatar the Last Airbender. But before we get started, I wanted to take a quick minute just to talk about copyright. So the official definition of copyright, for those that might not be familiar, is that copyright is the exclusive legal right given to an originator or an assignee to print, publish, perform, film, or record literary, artistic, or musical material. This originator also is the only person, company, group that can allow others to do the same with that artwork. So basically this means that whoever owns a work of art is the only person, group, company that can legally make, distribute, and profit off of that artwork. So for instance, Disney now owns the Star Wars universe, which means that they are the only company that can make and profit off of content that they create in the Star Wars universe. This also means that streaming services like Netflix or Hulu have to ask Disney permission if they want to stream the Star Wars films or anything in the Star Wars extended universe on their streaming platform. So the reason that I can show you all how to draw Aang today is because of a subset of copyright law called fair use. So fair use is basically something that allows people to use copyrighted works without permission, as long as that use supports learning, research, and teaching, and also benefits the public. So we think that teaching you all how to draw characters that you might like from pop culture is definitely something that falls under fair use because I'm able to teach you something, you're able to learn something, and it benefits you perhaps because it gives you something to do during the summer months. So without further ado, I am going to shift my camera and so you guys can see my sketchbook and what I'm doing, and we will get started. Okay, so to get started with our drawing, the only thing that you need in order to draw anything ever is a pencil, a piece of paper, and an eraser. So I've got my sketchbook, but you can use literally any piece of paper that you can find around your house to start this drawing. And then a pencil, I like mechanical pencils. Whatever you have around is perfectly good. And then I have a couple of erasers. These are my favorite to use, but any eraser will do. I have one that looks like a pen just for fun. All right, so to start, we're going to draw Aang in a meditative position. This is one of the best ways to draw Aang because it's really easy to block out shapes, and you'll see what I mean here in a little while. Okay. I made a mark. I'm just going to erase it. That's exactly why we need our eraser. So to start out, we're going to draw a circle. It does not have to be a perfect circle. This is essentially going to be Aang's head. So it can be a little bit lumpy because heads are not perfect anyway. So just do your best. Make it as round as you can, but no worries if it doesn't look great. To start out, you're also going to want to draw really lightly because a lot of the lines that we're going to draw at first are going to be erased later. So make sure that you're not like carving your pencil into the paper. Just draw really lightly as best as you can. All right, so then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make like a weird sort of triangle shape here for the rest of Aang's head. So if you can see what I'm doing, you kind of just want to make it like the chin is going to be a triangle and then it's going to connect to the circle through here. And then we're also going to very, very lightly draw one line down the center of the head. And then we're also going to draw a curved line right about where the sort of chin and jaw meet the circle that we drew. So right here, draw a slightly curved line We're not going to do anything with this yet, but later those will be important. If you want, you can also erase the bottom of the circle here. Since we now have that curved line, you don't have to. I'm going to, just because it makes it a little bit easier for me to see. But then you basically have Aang's head, which is always a good starting point. Can round it out a little bit over there too. I'm going to do that now. But okay, so once we have a good starting point for Aang's head, the next thing we're going to do is draw a rectangle. And we're going to draw a couple shapes here next to sort of block out the sort of structure of Aang's body, and then we'll fill out the details in a little while. So to start out, you're going to draw like not super far under his chin, maybe like, I don't really know exact measurements, but like 5 millimeters, like make sure it feels good for you. I don't know. Underneath his chin, you're going to draw a curved line to start, kind of like that. And then we're going to draw a rectangle down this way, which is going to be the basis for like his spine and his torso. And you want this rectangle to roughly be about 2 of his head. So one of the ways that you can kind of roughly measure things out as you're drawing is with your pencil. So basically measure out. So you start with the lead right at the top of his head, and then you mark with your thumb roughly where his chin stops, right? And so this part here is going to be your rough measurement. So the rectangle needs to be about 2 heads tall. So that means the bottom of my rectangle is going to be about right there. And you can square that off. Make sure that the top of the rectangle is rounded, because this is going to be the basis of his shoulders, but the rest of it can be square. And remember that you're drawing really lightly right now. Okay, so then we're going to start in on his shoulders. So you're going to continue this curved line a little bit past the edges of the rectangle that we just drew. And we're going to turn this into a rhombus-like shape. This is why geometry is cool, you guys. It helps with drawing so much. Okay, about halfway down the rectangle, roughly like 1 head length, draw a straight line that extends out a little ways, roughly the same, so like using this rectangle as your measurement, roughly. So you should have a line that's about that wide. Sorry, it's really hard to describe measurements in YouTube videos, I found out, and like how to measure for drawing. But anyway, so roughly extend it out. So like this width and this width and this are all about the same size. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's a good starting point. And then once you have your line, connect these two. So you see we have like a really rough, sort of rounded rhombus-like shape, and that is going to turn into Aang's arms in a little bit. Okay, so we have that, and now we want to deal with where his legs are going to be. So down here, we're going to start on another rectangle, but this one is going to be pretty rounded. It's not going to be as straight and square as this first one we drew. So right about here, maybe a little above, we're going to start in with the top line. And then you round it out maybe made that a little too curved. Again, this is where erasers come in handy. But these lines don't matter too much because they'll go away later. So still make sure to be drawing lightly. I'm going to keep reminding you all of that pretty much the whole time. So we have our first line, rounded out a little bit. This second line comes down here slightly under the base of that first rectangle, and then finish it off. So you have like another weird, it wants to be a rectangle, but it's too wibbly and curvy for that. And this is going to turn into Aang's legs. So basically what you should have is your blocking for the structure of Aang, and it should be kind of triangular. You see how we kind of create a rough triangle from the top of Aang's head down to what's going to be his knee, over to his other knee, and back up. And that will help a bit with proportions later, because proportions when you're drawing people are really important. You want to make sure that everything looks, you know, pretty decent. Otherwise you end up with some really wonky drawings. But anyway. Okay, so this is your structure. This is the basic structure, and now we're going to work within this to start filling out the other details. So the first thing that we're going to do is connect Aang's head to his neck. Wait, nope, I said that wrong. We're going to connect his head to his shoulders with his neck. So Aang's neck is pretty thin. He's kind of a wiry dude. And this is maybe the easiest two lines you'll ever draw. You just want to connect those like that, right there. And I maybe made his neck a little too long. I might want to make it a little bit shorter than that, but I think we're going to be okay. Right? So we have his neck, which is a good start. And what we're also going to do is we're going to position his hands. So about halfway between this line, we're going to draw another line, and we're going to draw two kind of curved rectangles just like the bottom here, and this is where his hands are going to be. So basically all of this blocking is really important because it makes drawing in the details a lot easier. And they're not super big. They're about the same size as his neck, I think, roughly. So two little weird curvy rectangles right there, and that's where his hands are gonna go. Okay, so now here's the fun part, because we get to start filling in some of the details and like really structuring him in. We're gonna like start on his clothes and all of that fun stuff. So we're gonna start with his collar first, because that's one of my favorite things to draw. So Aang, in one of his outfits, wears a collar. So we're gonna draw two curved lines a little out. It goes a little bit past his head. You can see that it juts out from his jaw slightly. So draw two curved lines like that, kind of like backwards parentheses. Connect the top of each line to his jaw right there. And then we're also going to draw like this curved V shape here. And that's going to be the basic structure for some of his clothes in a little bit. We're also going to start blocking out his sleeves. So if you kind of start up here at the top where his shoulders are, and then draw another line that kind of comes out, and then another curved line like that, that sort of connects down to the bottom, that bottom line where his arms and shoulders are going to be. So it should look a little bit like that. And we're going to do a similar thing on the other side, but they don't have to be symmetrical because clothing is rarely symmetrical. So I'm going to make this one a bit more curved. It still kind of juts out here because we're drawing out his arms, and that's his elbow. That's where his elbow is going to be. And I know it doesn't look quite like that yet, but it will soon, I promise. And that one's going to be a little bit more curved. And we're going to do the same thing down here with his pants. So, because he's going to be sitting cross-legged, so right here, we're going to kind of do a similar thing with his pant legs, where we kind of draw over like that, and they kind of come in. And then a similar thing, but not completely symmetrical over here. And there we're starting to kind of get a sense of what his clothes are going to look like. All right. So now we're going to start filling it. So we have our basic, like our super basic structure, and we're going to start filling in like his actual arms and legs and a couple other details. So we're going to get past blocking. So about right here on this arm, a little bit where like this, you see where my line here connects to the bottom of the weird rhombus, you're going to draw another curved line. And you're going to do the same thing on this end. So they look a little bit like parentheses. Lots of parentheses in Aang, honestly. All right, right here. And you're going to do the same thing with his legs about right here. Actually, that's a little bit too close to his arm, so I'm going to move that line a bit. I also apologize if the camera shakes. Sometimes with the eraser, it might shake a little bit. So right here, roughly, make sure that it's like the knee comes out past the arm. So like if you drew a straight line down, you want to make sure that the knees come out a little bit past that. Perfect. Okay. And same thing over here. Draw a straight line down. That looks about right. Okay. So you have the basic structure for where the knees are going to be. And we're also going to finish off the collar real quick, which goes like this. So you draw a couple curved lines there, and then a little V shape to finish off his collar. And then once we're done, we'll erase some of the lines in there, and I'll show you where to start erasing. But that's his collar done, which is super cool. So we don't have to touch that again until we erase stuff. Okay, so now things are gonna get super interesting because we're gonna start in on the arms. So we're gonna start with what is his right arm, but is the arm on the left where we're drawing. And we're gonna connect it to the hand like that. And we're gonna do the same thing on this side. And then you also want to kind of round out that line so they look, I don't know, like what, like weirdly shaped bowling pins, I guess. Does anyone bowl anymore? I don't even know. Okay, so now we have his arms. We're getting somewhere. We're also gonna start in on this leg over here. And his legs are gonna get interesting because they're gonna be crossed. So part of his leg is going to be hidden. So we're gonna start here. And we're gonna draw a curved line going down that way. And we're gonna start with the foot. So it's similar to what the arm looks like, though slightly different. And then you also want to make it look, because we're drawing his shin and his calf. So everything is really rounded off. And then we're pretty much going to leave those 2 lines alone. You can if you want to. This helps me. It might not help you. But I like to sort of connect this right here. This is going to be his foot. But I like to connect it and come back to it. Just really lightly right there. All right, so we have that. And we're also going to work a little bit up here. So this is going to be like where his pants are. So you just want to draw like a weird sort of wibbly line right there to connect his one leg to the other, basically, because he's seated, if that makes any sense. I hope all of this makes sense. It definitely makes sense in my head, but I know not everyone thinks the same. So there we go. And then we can move on to more parts. All right. So his next leg is going to be hidden behind the other. So you just start like right here, or over here is maybe a better place to start. And you kind of do the same thing, but less exaggerated, because his one leg and one foot is tucked behind the other. And then you draw another line to sort of connect that there. And that's all you have to do for that leg. And then we're also going to draw out the foot a little bit. So feet and hands are sometimes a little rough. I made that brought that out too far. But don't be afraid of feet and hands is basically what I was going to actually finish that sentence with, because blocking techniques like this are really, really helpful for that. So his foot basically looks like this. So you just draw 2 lines kind of straight out from where they were and then round them off, like round off the top. And that should work pretty well for his foot a little bit later. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to get into his clothes a little bit more. So Aang wears like this weird shawl situation kind of on top. So we're going to mimic that by drawing a little V shape right here. If you see in pictures of him, like this top part's orange and then the under part is yellow. So we're just going to create that right there. We're also going to draw 2 lines right there and right here to sort of indicate a little later that he's wearing shoes, kind of. His shoes are a little weird because they always look a little bit like stuck to him. They don't look like regular shoes. They're really form-fitting. That's the word I wanted. And then we're also going to do the same thing with his wrists, because he has weird little bracelet things. Okay, and then also rounding that off to sort of show his sleeves. Okay, so we have roughly his shoulders and his arms and roughly his legs, and now we want to finish off his torso so we don't just have like these straight lines. So about right here, we're gonna start drawing in the rest of his top, which looks like that. And then connect these 2 here. I actually made that one a little bit, I went too far. I don't want to go quite that far out. Actually want to go about there. All right. So now we have his body, and you can see he's like meditating, and it's super cool. Okay, so here is the point where I like to start erasing lines so I can see what I've done and see where I need to make adjustments on the rest of the design. So you want to start erasing anything where we originally started blocking, right? So like this original weird triangle thing, you can erase those lines. Again, sorry if the camera shakes because of all of the erasing. I'm gonna erase that here. And I might actually go in for these finer details with this eraser I have that looks a little bit like a pen. Sometimes the thicker erasers get a little too thick and you end up erasing lines that you don't want to erase. But this helps you sort of see the work a little bit better, like I said, and where you can kind of start to make some adjustments. Erase that in here because his foot is up top. These here. And then definitely in the collar right here, we want to get rid of some of these lines in there. And then be careful when you wipe your eraser shavings away because sometimes pencils will like smear all across the page and we don't want that. Okay. All right. So now for me, it's a little bit easier to see where I might want to make some adjustments. So for instance, I think that this knee is out a little bit too far. So I'm going to adjust that, kind of bring it in a little bit. And yours might look different at this point. Like so take a look at what you've done and where that you kind of want to move some lines, adjust some things, because it might not be exactly where I'm making adjustments. I just went like way too far out right there. And then I kind of want to make this line a little bit more curved. So I want to go like this to sort of make it a little more. And I want to bring it under his elbow a little bit. So we're going to do some details in his clothing first. So we basically want to make sure that it looks like he is actually wearing clothing. And an important part of clothing is wrinkles. You know, like when you sit down and, you know, have clothing, it doesn't just sort of stick to you like a second skin. There's a whole bunch of folds and other things to indicate that something is on your body rather than, you know, like I said, having a second skin. So to indicate that he's wearing this shawl, we're gonna draw a couple different lines. I'm gonna do one right here, a sort of curved one right there. And then his elbows and knees, like where they fold, are really important because that's where most of the clothing folds are gonna be. So we're drawing a couple curved lines out from his elbow right there to indicate that there are folds. I'm not really sure how to explain it better than that, but I hope it makes sense. Actually going to do that one and then one more like right there. And then the same on this side. I don't have to draw a lot of them. A few lines in this instance go a long way, but we just want to make it look like real clothes, which is also why I've done this one underneath right there. And then we're going to do a few on his pants as well. So definitely feel free to mimic the lines that I'm doing as best as you can, but if you feel like there's another, you know, part of his clothing where you can see a wrinkle being or something, definitely feel to experiment and see what works and what looks good. Okay. I think there would be something there. There. All right. Okay. So now once that's done, we can get in and start to work on his face. So these two lines that we drew at the beginning are going to be really important because that's where we're going to start working on his face. This curved line right here, I hope you guys can see, is one of the most important parts because that's where his eyes are going to be. So I'm also gonna like move that out. I forgot to make adjustments on his head when I was doing adjustments before. So feel free to do that now if you want to. We're gonna round out his jaw a little bit because he is 12, so it's not super square. And then fix that a little bit so I know where I'm drawing. Okay. So his eyes are going to be closed in this because he's meditating. So we want to make sure that he looks as peaceful and as calm as possible. So this is like, you know, book 1 Aang maybe before, definitely not book 3 Aang where he's busy trying to figure out how to fight Fire Lord Ozai. You're going to draw 1 on either side of this center line. And they're just kind of really simple curved lines. And then there are 2 little things right there. And then his eyebrows kind of look like worms. They're really easy because they're just kind of like weird fake half moons that extend past his eyes a little bit. I might have done his eyes a little too wide. It's hard for me to see since I want to make sure that this is flat so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I might pick it up and make a few adjustments in a second. But actually, yeah, now that I've seen his eyebrows, I made his eyes way too wide. That's a bit better. Kind of flips up a little bit right there. Like that. And now we have his eyes and his eyebrows, which is super cool. And now we're gonna do his nose, which is also pretty simple. The cool thing about Aang's face, and really the style of Avatar the Last Airbender in general, is that it's not super complicated. For the most part. I also might have just chosen a drawing that's not super complicated. But his nose starts with like these other, also kind of half moons. And feel free to draw really lightly and then just, you know, play around with it until you get it right. I am struggling a little. That's a little bit more like what I want it to look like. And then there are just 2 dots for his nostrils. Okay, we're gonna do his mouth and then maybe, no, actually, okay, so I see what the issue was with his nose is I had it up a little bit too high. So the thing about faces is that their rough proportions, which I actually should have mentioned before, is that the eyes are about halfway between the top of the head and the chin. So if you split the head in two and you have a curved line right there, that's about halfway down, and then there's another half down to the chin. The nose is about halfway between where the eyes are and where the chin is, and then the mouth is roughly halfway between that. So you can kind of, there's a lot of geometry and math involved, which is, you know, take that as you want to. So the nose, I had it a little bit too high because it should actually be about down here. That's better. And then the mouth is super easy because it's just we're just doing one line. Kind of like that. And you can make him smiling if you want to. I kind of want to make him look really thoughtful and pensive. So just one line. It can be slanted, or you can experiment with doing it straight across, whatever looks good, whatever you think works best. And then once we're done with the mouth, we're going to do the ears. So the ears, Aang has really big ears. So they start kind of about where the eyebrow ends, like a little bit right there. And they curve around to about where his nose is. And same thing on this side. And then you can draw a little lines to indicate that there are some details in his ears. You don't have to go crazy. I'm just gonna do the two. And there you have it. So we have his face and the rest of his body. And now for the final detail. Once you have everything on his head looking the way you want it, feel free to, that's why erasers are important, as you know. And then once we have that all done, the absolute last thing we're gonna do is draw his arrows on his head and his hands. So his arrow ends like right above his eyebrows, right in the middle of his head. And goes and continues all the way back around his skull. So you kind of want to taper the arrows off a little bit to sort of indicate that they're rounding out a little bit like that. And then same thing with his hands right here. Just draw little tiny arrows. Oh, that one was weird, but that's okay. I'm not gonna erase it because I don't feel like it. All right. And that is it, my friends. So yeah, that's it. If you finish drawing and you feel like you want to keep going and you have materials around like markers or colored pencils or anything, feel free to color it in as well. I don't have any of those on hand with me at the moment, so I'm not going to do that. You can also, if you're not super cool with the pencil lines and you want to practice outlining, you can always take a black, like fine point marker, like a Sharpie, a fine tip Sharpie or something, and trace around where you've already drawn to make it a little bit more permanent and not erasable. You also definitely want to erase at this point now. You want to erase the sort of structural lines we drew on his face. And there you have it. Thank you all so much for watching this video and letting me show you how to draw what is definitely one of my characters from what I think is a great television show, Avatar the Last Airbender. And we will see you next time. Yeah, we'll see you next time.